We're going to make sure John has it then. And just so everyone knows, there's sign-up sheets out there. Make sure you sign in, you check in. If you didn't sign in, you were never here. You know, you don't have to do it right now. You can do it afterwards, but the sign-up sheets are right out there. There was only one sign. Yes, sir. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday night huddle up here at Hope for Prisoners. My name is Graham Miller. I am a graduate and an alumni of the program. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. You know, we're at the Hope for Prisoners Billy Walter Center for Second Chances in the Steve and Judy Siegel Auditorium. So give yourself a round of applause for coming out and see us tonight. I think we have some excited people in the room. I also want to introduce all of our friends at the Nevada Department of Corrections. We have all the men out there at Southern Desert Correctional Center and Unit 12A, and let's give them a big round of applause for tuning in with us tonight. We have the ladies out there at Gene Conservation Camp. Give yourselves a hand, and everyone give them a round of applause. And last but not least, we can't forget about Casa Grande Transitional Housing Center. Give yourself a round of applause and give them a round of applause for tuning in with us tonight. I want to thank everyone else for tuning in from all across the world. Facebook Live, Hope for Prisoners LinkedIn page, Facebook Hope for Prisoners page. Tonight, we're going to have a good night. We have an exciting speaker that's going to come out and share their story with you tonight and tell us a whole lot about themselves. But before we do that, I would like for someone in this building to open us up in a nice prayer just to kick off the night. Do we have any chaplains in the building, or we have anybody who would like to say a prayer and open us up? Get us started. Want to come on up? What's your name, sir?
Anthony.
Graham, Chaplain Anthony.
I see, Graham.
Go ahead and open
Always
us
a
up in
pleasure.
prayer tonight, man.
All righty. Let's bow our heads. Father God, Lord, Creator, we ask your blessing over tonight. We ask that you continually to encourage these young men and women in each and everywhere they're at right now. Let the Holy Spirit come down and touch them right there where they're at. Give them the assurance that you are never going to depart them, and you will always keep them in their prayers. Let's ask to see if they will be able to rise up and continue to get the wisdom, not only where they're at, but get the words of encouragement that the person that's going to be blessing us tonight and the speaker, we also give them the praise and the glory that you can only do. And we give them the wisdom. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain. Appreciate you.
Well, yeah.
So now that we have that part of the ceremony out the way, Tuesday night huddle up, we like to open this up for popcorn testimonies. I want somebody in this room. We have Nevada Department of Corrections. Those of you out there, I'm sure there's some exciting things that have happened in your life today or throughout the week. It might be sobriety. It might be a job. It might be something that you just want to share with us as far as a popcorn testimony. Who has something positive and enlightening that they'd like to share with us and kick off the night? Southern Desert Correctional Center, step up and give us your name.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hello, my name is Calvin Neto. Well, today I just want to say thank God. I just want to say thank you to God because I'll be getting released in a few days now. One, and the second thing is today is a year sobriety for me. So, again, thank God.
Hey, congratulations. Give him a big round of applause for that. A year sobriety. I know what that feels like. And welcome home. We'll look forward to seeing you here at the program. Tell us your name, sir, and tell us what you want to share with us.
My name is Eric Tompkins, and I want to give enlightenment today to thank God for being here, to be alive today, to be able to do this program. I graduated as a welder. I got a job when I get out of here. I changed a lot about my life, man, and I thank God for it, man, because I couldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. So I'm appreciative of that. I'm appreciative of everybody I see on this huddle up, man, that I know from the streets, man, that's actually doing good, man, and doing something proper with their life, man. I respect that, and I love that, man. I love to see that. And I thank God, man, for just really being here, and thank him for giving me the understanding and patience to finish this program and do what I got to do so I can get a bright future, man. Thank
Hey,
you.
congratulations. Give him a big round of applause for that. Hey, man, I salute you. You know, we look forward to seeing you here. Congratulations and hats off to you. Step up, tell us your name, sir, and your popcorn testimony.
How you doing? My name is Lamont Boulder. I just want to stress the importance of family, man. I'm not going to, do a long drawn-out speech, but, this last week I've been really leaning on my people, man, and they do not disappoint, man. They've been getting me through this, man, and God is good, man. Just gratitude to everything that I'm reaching for that's receiving me. And, family's the main thing this week. That's the word for the week, family.
Family. Everybody give Lamont a big round of applause for that. Hats off to you, man. We agree with that 100%. Does anybody else have any popcorn testimonies? Gene Conservation Camp. Oh, here we go. Tell us your name and what you want to share with us.
Hello, my name is Samantha. It's not really a testimony, but my kids are going through it right now. So mom loves you, all 10 of you. So prayers going to you. Shout out to my mom for rocking with them. All glory to God. I'll be out sooner than later. To keep praying and just know mommy loves you guys. Eric, I love you. I'm proud of you. And God is good.
Hey, Samantha, we love you too. Listen, virtual hugs for you from us. And, we're here for you. Everybody, step up, popcorn testimony, tell us your name and what you want to share with us.
Alexandra Monroe. I just want to shout out to Amy, my sister, for taking care of my daughter, and my daughter for hanging in there and just doing so good. God is good, and I'm really dancing on the grave that I once lived in. Hey.
Congratulations. Everybody give her a big round of applause for that. Do we have any more popcorn testimonies? Okay, Gene Conservation Camp, tell us your name and what do you want to share with us?
My name's Ethel. I just want to tell my son happy 25th birthday, Jose. I'll be out in 3 weeks, and I won't be doing this no more. I'm done. I can't do this no more, and I'm trying to let my kids down. I can't do this no more. I'm gonna do right when I get out, and I'm gonna show you guys. I love you guys.
Everybody, let's wish Jose a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Jose. Listen, we love you too, and we'll see you when you get here. What's your name and what do you want to share with us?
Hi, I'm Danita. I was coming to share a testimony about my daughter. She went through a trying time in her teenagehood, and she's recently gotten off the street. She's back in school, real school, not virtual school, and she's doing really good. I just wanted to say that God is good and her life is being restored. So, okay.
God is good. God is great. Big round of applause. Thank you for sharing that with us. What's your popcorn testimony and tell us your name?
My name's Nick Porter, and I just want to say that I got 3 years clean and sober. Tomorrow, I get submitted for CASA. I'm submitted for CASA. I want to give a shout out to my loved ones out there, my sisters, and the love of my life. And Philippians 1:3. I thank God for every remembrance of you. I love you guys so much.
Hey, we love you too. Congratulations. Listen, you get submitted to CASA, you'll get what you want. What's your name and what's your popcorn testimony?
My name is Sabrina, and I'm just really grateful. I have 11 days until I expire, and I'm just really grateful that I have a stable environment to go home to, and I'm just so proud of my friend in Southern Desert. I'm so proud of him to hear good things about him and that he's going to change his life, and it's just a pick me up that encourages me to be able to change mine too.
Nice. Listen, we'll see you in 11 days. We'll see you here. Next Huddle Up, I expect to see you in the room. What's your name and what's your popcorn testimony?
Jessica, I go home in 9 days. Also, I've been a lot with God lately. I've been sitting here learning how to forgive and be able to move on within my life. You know what I mean? I finally came to accept that, you know what I mean? I don't have to do drugs just to keep living my life. I mean, I learned how to cope with that and move on from that, because that's the old me. The new me is ready to join your program, join Thunder, and I'm ready to be there.
Hey, we'll be waiting for you. Congratulations. 9 days. Next Huddle, you should be in this room. Does anybody have any? Okay, what's your name, young man, and what you want to share with us?
My name is Terrell Hopwood. I just want to give a congratulations to everybody at all the camps, from Gene to all the camps to Casa Grande to right here in Southern Desert, to everybody that's doing their thing and stepping it up in life and trying to, achieve things. John Ponder came up here lately and he said something to us. He said that right now we're in limbo. That's when Peter stepped out the boat when Jesus asked him to have faith and just step out. And so that's what everybody's doing right now to get their life together. We're in limbo. So congratulations to everybody and blessings to everybody.
That's right. Give him a big round of applause. I will say this, man, even though you are in limbo, stay positive. Great things happen. Patience is a virtue. What do you got for us at Casa Grande? What's your name and what's your popcorn testimony, sir?
My name is Jesse Ramirez. I just wanted to say that, I'm grateful for my setback that I got, and to know that my beautiful wife Andrea is out there still with me, rocking with me, and Hope for Prisoners give me all these resources to get back on track, and I just want to be thankful and let them know, thank God for that.
Nice. Give him a big round of applause. Thank God every day. What's your name? What's your popcorn testimony, sir?
My name's Jamal Haley. Want to tell everybody congratulations for trying to do something positive. You know what I'm saying? Instead of always trying to run and do the wrong thing. I want to thank God for giving me the opportunity to make some money the right way instead of getting up out here and trying to run it up the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a blessing to be here. I'm only been here for a week, so I'm just blessed to be here. Thank you.
Hey, hang in there, man. Congratulations on that new train of thought that you have there. What's your name? What's your popcorn testimony?
All right, my name is Lindell, and just recently, my little thing, she had went off and everything, right? But the situation that she went off to has been running her down the drain, right? So I just want to thank the Lord for showing her that she should have just stuck it out, and that's it too. Grateful to be at Casa Grande and everything.
Hey, God is good, man. God is good. You're in a good place. Well, everybody, we're going to go ahead and cut these popcorn testimonies short so we can get into the next segment of this Huddle Up tonight. We have an amazing person to share with you guys, and that's going to tell you a whole lot about themselves. So just to get into the bio, Glenn E. Martin is an American advocate for criminal justice and reform and the founder of Just Leadership USA, an organization dedicated to cutting the U.S. prison population in half by 2030. He has become a leading voice for justice reform, particularly in how the criminal justice system disproportionately impacts communities of color. Before becoming an advocate, Martin spent 6 years incarcerated in the New York Rikers Island, where he experienced firsthand the conditions of the U.S. prison system. His personal experience with the criminal justice system led him to become a passionate advocate for reform. Martin's work focuses on elevating the voices of those most affected by the system, formerly incarcerated individuals, while pushing for policies that reduce incarceration, promote rehabilitation, and provide second chances. He has worked with various organizations, policymakers, community leaders to create change, and he is a frequent speaker and writer on the topic. He has also become involved in campaigns to reduce mass incarceration and has worked on policy initiatives like the Second Chance Act and the effort to change parole practices. His life story and work have been recognized by several prominent institutions, and he has received numerous awards for his efforts in the criminal system. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Glenn E. Martin.
Cool. Thanks for that introduction. How much time do I have, by the way?
You have 45 minutes. Actually, technically,
okay, great.
You have 30. You have 30 because we have to open it up for Q&A.
Okay, 30 minutes and then Q&A. Thanks for that. Thanks for that generous introduction. I really appreciate that. A lot of respect goes out to John Ponder, someone I've admired from the day that I met him. And more recently, he asked me to join the board of Hope for Prisoners. So I'm now a board member, and that's such an honor and an opportunity for me. I've had a long day. I'm on the East Coast, so it's 9 p.m. and it's been a really long day, and I'll describe what my days look like so you understand what I mean. But I can't think of a better way to spend the end of my day, because when I was in prison 25 years ago, it didn't take me long to realize that we lock up some of America's best and brightest. And as I sit here and listen to the testimonies this evening, that is just continually reinforced for me, and it reinforces why I try to show up in the world the way I show up. So John asked me to come and give a bit of my testimony, and I never know where to start. Do I start at the beginning or do I start at the end and work my way backwards? I think this evening I'm going to start at the beginning and work my way up to where I am now. And then I really look forward to the time where you guys are going to get to ask me questions, because that's when I think things get really dynamic in these sorts of conversations. So when I have two brothers, one older, one younger, and my older brother and I, we lived actually outside of the United States for the first 8 or 9 years of our lives. We're about a year apart. And then we found ourselves in the middle of what's called Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, back in the 70s and early 80s. And it was a very tough place to live. It's a different place now, but it was a very tough place to live back then. And my older brother sort of just made it out. At the age of like 16 and a half, he went into the Navy. And as you can imagine, that just really changed the trajectory of his life, right? Like, not just because it's the military, though that did give him discipline, but also because when you're exposed to new opportunity and you come to believe that those opportunities are for you, it really gives you a new avenue and a different path to take. And his journey ended up very different than mine. Before I was able to follow him into the military, I got locked up. I got locked up a couple of times. I got locked up for shoplifting, and I'll tell that story in a second. And then I got another subsequent incarceration, which I'll talk about also. But let's start with where he ended up. So my brother, when he came out of the military, he did what a lot of people go into the military do, and join law enforcement. And he actually became a federal correction officer, and then he became a U.S. Marshal. Thanksgiving at home is really rough, as you can imagine, given the trajectory he ended up on and the one that I ended up on. But it also contributed to how I show up in the world now, because I have a very dynamic view of criminal justice and incarceration and the journey people take through the system. And when I say the journey people take through the system, I'm always thinking of multiple stakeholders, people who are doing time, but also correctional staff, correctional counselors, and so on, because I think everyone potentially plays a role in a person becoming successful or a person recidivating and having to come back through the system. But much of that comes from my personal story and my brother ending up in a different direction. So at 16 years old, I get arrested for attempted shoplifting in Manhattan, New York. And I'm 16, but in New York, you charge 16-year-olds as adults. And I go in front of a judge that day, and the judge says, I'm going to send you to Rikers Island with $1,500 bail to teach you a lesson. And we were so poor that $1,500 bail might as well have been $15 million bail, because no one was coming to bail me out. When you're poor and you get money, you spend it. You don't have $1,500 in the bank. And the judge wanted me to come back to court 3 days later. But that money, again, for me was like ransom money. I just wasn't going anywhere. And so I go to Rikers, and if you know anything about Rikers, Rikers is just, people go to jail, people go to prison. There's a space where people spend trying to get their lives back together, do the right thing. But it shouldn't be Rikers for anyone, period. I don't care what you've done. It is just the worst of the worst. It is a place with brick and mortar facilities that should have been taken offline decades ago in most cases. It's an island. There's only one way on, one way off. And it has an insidious history. It was purchased from a guy named Richard Riker, who was the head of the court system in New York many, many decades ago, and who at nighttime was part of a group called the Kidnap Club that would grab young Black men off the street and send them back to the slave-holding South. So like everything about this place speaks to the opposite of what we hope for people when they end up in trouble, for people to have a place to really be thoughtful about what got them there and figure out how to take advantage of whatever opportunities are available for them to get out. And in my case, as a 16-year-old, because you're charged as an adult in New York, I found myself in a very dangerous situation, even if I was only there for 3 days. And I promise you the story will get brighter after I finish telling this part of it, but buckle up and bear with me for a second. I'm in a cell on my way to court 3 days later, early in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. And there's a bunch of other children in the cell. We were all children, 16-year-olds are children. And one guy steps to me and says, "Give me your jacket." And if you know anything about Rikers, predator or prey, you really have two choices. And at that moment, I had to say to him, "I'm not giving you my jacket." And you can imagine what the rest of that looked like. We ended up in a fight. In the middle of that fight, I recognized that I was bleeding, and within seconds realized that I had gotten stabbed in that cell 4 different times. And the correction officer took me out of the cell and asked me, did I want to go to the nurse or did I want to go to the courts? And I wanted to go to court because I wanted to go home. And so I got sent to the court, stood in front of the judge, and the judge said, he didn't say anything about the blood on my shirt, the blood on my sweater, anything. He let me go home that day. And you would think that that would have taught me a lesson about not going to jail. That's what some people think, that if people have a very tough experience, that becomes the reason they don't go back. I firmly believe that when you give people a response that they don't expect, that's actually when you get better outcomes. And so I'm going to talk about my subsequent arrest. So I go back to the streets. The only lesson I felt like I learned was that if you're going to be in the streets and poor and committing crime in New York, then you better be ready to handle one of the toughest places. And because I made it out alive, I said to myself, if I needed to handle it again, I could handle it. And went back to the streets and made a bunch of really poor decisions and so on, and probably led my younger brother on the wrong path, and ended up back in prison years later for much more serious crime, facing 20 to 40, armed robbery, multiple armed robberies. And I went to court. My bail was a few $100,000. I knew I wasn't going to bail out. Had a pretty good lawyer, luckily, because the first few times I had gotten arrested, I didn't have a good lawyer. And my lawyer said, you're going to go to Rikers and you're going to sit there and you're going to give me a chance to try to negotiate a different plea deal for you. And I ended up getting 3 to 9 after spending a year and change on Rikers. And part of it was that the court was charging me as a youthful offender when they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have counted that as a felony. So he gets me a 3 to 9. So if I'm being honest, and anyone who knows me knows that's what you're going to get from me, I was thinking, okay, you got a year and change in on Rikers. You got a 3 to 9. If you get out in 3, you'll be home in less than 2 years. And you can go back to what you were doing before you got locked up. Like, that's just where my head was, even as in my early 20s. And then I go through orientation to go to prison. And in New York, they put you through an aptitude test to figure out what sort of job opportunities are available to you, whether you need to go to school or whatever. And as I'm taking the test, and anyone who's been through this, and it looks like everyone here has been through this, you know, these can be some of the lowest, darkest moments of your life, right? Like, you don't know if your girlfriend's going to stay with you. You don't know if your wife is going to stay with you, your husband. You don't know if your family's going to show up, if they're going to send you packages, if they're going to put money in your account. You don't know what it's like to lose years off your life. What's that going to feel like? What's it like when the rest of the world is moving forward and you're standing still? Very dark. It could be a very dark moment in your life, though I have grown the most in dark moments in my life, by the way. And as I took the test and finished, and all I could think about was being what's called on the draft, moving along to whatever correctional facility I was going to be in. This correction counselor put his hand on my shoulder and looked down at my grades and said, "Wow, you should go to college." And, you know, in the moment, honestly, I think that person saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And if that person walked by me on the subway today, I probably would not recognize them. But that person planted a seed that grew into a tree that cast shade that even he wouldn't enjoy. And yet it was a game changer for me. I think we lost one of the feeds. I'm sorry. Maybe someone can try to get it back. I'll keep going though. And I say that because a week later, I was sent to the prison where I was going to start serving time. And I get there and I realize there's a college program. And this was after Pell Grants were taken away. So there was no reason for there to be a college program there. Most facilities didn't have any college. And it was clear to me that that correction counselor made sure I ended up at a facility with a college program, even though that facility was over 10 hours away from where I actually lived. And so I signed up for the college program, and suddenly I was in class learning religion, psychology, sociology, economics, philosophy. And the next statement may sound strange to some people or not, but I found myself freer with a book in a prison cell than I had ever been growing up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And I realize now, years later, why. Earlier, I said when people are exposed to opportunities that they believe is for them, that they can achieve new outcomes, different outcomes. And what that college program taught me, not just in the sense of like getting a credential and getting a job, but like repositioning myself in the universe, like how I see myself in relationship to the rest of the world. That was a game changer for me, recognizing that even though I thought I was exercising all this control over my life, that all it did was lead me to prison. And that's where it was going to lead me right from the beginning. Like literally all the control I thought I had quite the opposite. I was on a track to where I ended up. And if that's not what you want for yourself, and that's not what I wanted for myself, it was a moment for me to reassess the decisions I made that got me there, and the power I had to get myself out of there, first emotionally and mentally, and then ultimately physically, and then what the plan was, and what was the backup plan, and what was the backup plan to the backup plan for when I did leave prison. And I'm very deliberate with my choice of words, so pay attention closely for a second here. So I earned this 2-year degree. Takes me about 4 years because there's less college back then. We got Pell Grants back years later. It's great. But back then it was limited programs. And I come out of prison and I'm sort of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I got me a college degree. I'm in great shape. I'm going to look for a job and get my life together, everything else. And I go look for a job, and many people turn me down based solely on the criminal conviction. And that might have been the kind of thing that broke me years earlier. But because of the new attitude I picked up as a result of not just studying philosophy and psychology and sociology and religion and getting to know other people, other cultures, the United States economy, why people react the way they do, employer concerns even about hiring people with criminal records. And equally important, going through a program with a group of other men who were on a similar journey, because that is what most people get out of college, honestly, the experience of being in a cohort and traveling through together and learning with each other. As you can imagine, I learned more outside of the class than even in the classroom. But when I got home and I started facing those barriers and things started feeling heavy and dark, what I held on to was my commitment to myself in those college programs, my commitment to the other men that were in the college program, and then ultimately my commitment to my son at the time, who had missed 6 years of my life as a result of me doing those 6 years. That's how much time I ended up doing on the 3 to 9, 6 out of 9, not 3. But when I came out, and this is what attracts me to Hope for Prisoners, I met, after searching for a job for about 2 months, I think I visited about 40 different employers, and mostly got turned down solely based on the felony conviction. But I met a guy named George Leno. I'm not even sure why I remember his name. When you tell people what makes you successful, they rarely ever talk about a program or a job or anything like that. They talk about a human being. And it was a guy named George Leno, who was formerly incarcerated himself and who had taken the journey that I was taking about 10 years earlier. And he said, I'm not going to let go of your hand. I'm going to walk with you, and we're going to figure this out together. And that was a game changer for me. He's one of the people, just like the college correction counselor who said I should go to college. And George Leno would come to my house in the morning and ring my doorbell. And no matter how depressed I was and stressed out I was, he was just rolling with me. He had been through it, and he was going to roll with me. And that's part of what I get from Hope for Prisoners, is that it's not just the program helping people. It's the people in the program supporting each other and helping each other. And that's what's worked for me throughout my journey. And the journey from doing the wrong thing to doing the right thing is rarely ever linear. You know, sometimes it looks like this, and in my life, it looks like that. And as I tell you a little bit more about my life and where I've ended up, you'll understand, hopefully, that if you assume that just because a person is doing well, that there's no ups and downs in their life, that their life's not a roller coaster, that's not reality. There's always going to be moments in your life where you get pulled back into places that you don't want to be. And then the question is just how you respond to those moments, and do you get back up when you get knocked down? But I landed at a job at a nonprofit public interest law firm called the Legal Action Center. I didn't know what nonprofit meant. I didn't know what public interest meant. Didn't ever think I'd work at a law firm. And I was making $16,000 a year answering the phones at the front desk of this nonprofit. And I owed $83,000 in fines, fees, restitution, and child support. So do the math. Most people would have been like, how are you ever going to dig out of that hole? And granted, this was 25 years ago, but 16,000 25 years ago is about 34,000 today. And that's still not a lot of money. But it wasn't about the salary and it wasn't about the money. It was about the opportunity. It was a law firm. And I knew I was going to quickly go from sitting there answering the phones at the front desk, making $16,000 a year, to the very next opportunity that came up. I stayed there for 6.5 years, and I had 5 different jobs while I was there. I went from making that 16 grand a year to making 75 grand a year and running their largest policy advocacy initiative inside of this law firm. And then at a certain point, I realized, because it's a law firm and I'm not trained as a lawyer, I felt very disconnected from other formerly incarcerated people. And I felt like I couldn't just rely on my own experience from 6.5 years earlier to do what's called advocacy work, to support other formerly incarcerated people. And so I went to another larger nonprofit, which is very similar to Hope for Prisoners here in New York, had been around since 1967, called the Fortune Society. And instead of looking for a job, I presented myself to them as an opportunity. I said, if you hire me and if you pay me $95,000 a year, I will build out an advocacy center named after your founder, David Rothenberg, and I will hire my own staff. I will raise money, and I will elevate this organization's ability to do both direct services, social services, and advocacy work. And they took a shot on me, and they hired me. And 12 months later, I took over all of their fundraising and grew the organization from 10 million to 30 million. I took over their marketing and communications, rebranded the organization, gave it new life, took it out of its old sort of stale brand and made it brand new. And I took over some programmatic development work, hired 14 people on my own team. So their investment in me led to 14 additional staff members, plus growing the agency in the programmatic area. And more importantly, we got rid of all of our mandatory minimum drug laws in New York together as an organization that worked, where I was able to work directly with clients who were coming home from jail and prison to be a part of the work. And then after 6.5 years there, because that seems to be the magic number, I think around 5 years, I sort of get an itch. I'm like, I think I got to move on. Takes me another 1.5 years to figure out what's next. I hope you guys ask me questions about how do you figure out what's next. After this, don't ask me simple questions. Ask me complex questions. Ask me questions about what was I thinking? What was going on in my heart? What was going on in my mind? Those are the kind of things that I think are going to be most helpful. So as you think about your questions for when I drop my breath and let you go, please ask me the toughest questions and not the easiest ones. So after 6.5 years, I decided to build my own organization. And why? Because I realized the more I emerged as one formerly incarcerated person that is elevated into leadership, is the more it reinforces the narrative about the majority of us. Like, you know, if every once in a while there's one guy who makes it or one woman who makes it, that suggests that, you know, the narrative about everyone else might be true. And what I wanted to do is expose other people, like the folks I see on my Zoom right now, to similar opportunities. And I built an organization called Just Leadership USA to invest in the leadership of other formerly incarcerated people around the country. We had a year-long training called Leading with Conviction. We had a shorter training called Emerging Leaders. We became an advocacy organization, and we launched a campaign to shut down Rikers in New York, which was successful. Hopefully it'll be closed in a couple of years. but New York is already committed to it. It's in statute and so on. And then we created a membership. It was a huge membership organization. So anyone who believed that our justice system was not working would become members of this organization. Raised about $43 million, hired 50 people, opened 3 offices, and did really good work. And then moved on from there into the private sector, which is really interesting because the truth is when I grew up in the hood, I always said to myself, I want to make money. And I'm not shy about that. I think that one of the best ways to keep yourself out of trouble, keep your children out of trouble, keep your grandchildren out of trouble is to build wealth in this country. We're a capitalist country. And I think there are ways for people to engage in capitalism and in a way that liberates them, liberates their family, and gives them a different path for their future. And so I launched a nonprofit consultancy called Gem Trainers. And so imagine this now, 17 years of experience in the nonprofit space packaged into a small company, which was going to be me working as a consultant, hopefully trying to make 200 grand a year, but working outside of the nonprofit space. That now has grown into a company that made 3 million last year. I have 10 formerly incarcerated people working for me. We do fundraising, we do organizational development, we do crisis management, and we do executive coaching. We're very specific about what we do, very clear about what we do. There are a lot of things we could be doing that we don't do, but I'm most happy about being able to hire people that are formerly incarcerated, people who've been marginalized, people who've been blacklisted. Those are all my team members, and we have a great working relationship because of the way we move through the world. We try to move through the world with the same values that we want to see the world have. And are there tough times? Of course they are. But we remind ourselves of our values. We only choose clients who we believe match our values. But we've had about 86 clients in the last 7 years, and the company continues to grow. I think we're sort of at the scale where I want to be, mostly because when I tell you about the rest of my life, you'll understand why. But before I go to the last thing I want to say about my professional life, when I was at Just Leadership, I want to tell a quick story. I got invited to the White House when I launched the organization. And as you can imagine, as an advocate, the idea of getting invited to the White House is a big deal. And it was the first time I had ever been invited to the White House. I've been back a number of times since. But when I went to the White House, all of my colleagues were walking in and they were getting these green passes. And when I gave them my ID, I got this pink pass, this magenta colored pass. And if you have a criminal record and you're going into any building with law enforcement where they're checking your ID, you have some sense that something might not go well, especially a place like the White House. And sure enough, they gave me this pink ID and all my colleagues walked past me. They were going into this meeting with senior policy advisors to the president at the time. I don't think it matters which president. And I was stuck standing there at the entrance to the White House with a Secret Service agent looking down at me and saying, you can't go in. Like, whoever invited you here, they're gonna have to come get you. You need an escort. So you can go in, but unlike your colleagues, you need an escort. And I thought it was just fascinating that I'd get invited to the White House to give my opinions about what it's like to have a criminal record in America and then get barred from entering the White House after getting the invite. And as I'm standing there calling every single phone number I could think of, texting people, emailing people, hoping someone who went into that meeting would see that message and send someone to come get me. And the Secret Service agent sort of looking down at me and scowling at me a little bit. And this door behind him opens up and this young woman, maybe 23, 24 years old, comes out and she's like, Mr. And I was like, yes. I was like, the meeting's got to be half over. Can you take me in? And she was like, yes, I'll escort you in. I'm so sorry for this. And she grabs me and she brings me in, and the Secret Service agent kind of scowls at me again. I just walk past him laughing. And I get into the White House and we go to the elevator and she was like, oh my God, Mr. Johnson, I'm so sorry. I was like, my name is not Mr. Johnson. My name is Mr. Martin. And she was like, oh my God. And I was like, please don't take me back. Please take me to the meeting, please. I was like, I lost half the time standing out there waiting to get into the meeting. She takes me upstairs into the meeting. And I tell this story to get to this part. There are times in your life where you know the difference between right and wrong, and yet they might be a risk you take in speaking your truth. But I'm someone who's grown to believe that there is power in telling the truth and telling your truth and telling your testimony. And instead of, when the room got around to me and asked me, like, what sort of policy initiatives do I think this president should do to help people who've been involved in the criminal justice system, I could have just forgotten about what just happened downstairs and launched into some sort of policy discussion, which I'm really good at. I didn't. I told them what it was like to be barred from access to the White House in this country, what it's like to carry the weight of a criminal record beyond everything you've ever done to rehabilitate yourself. And that was a scary moment, because this was a president that everyone was hopeful about. This was a president that no one would expect a Black man to hold accountable. And yet it was a chance to change the tenor of that meeting towards everyone being truth tellers. And I could feel that. I could feel the meeting ended up being much more powerful and impactful because I spoke my truth, and it afforded everyone else a chance to be less buttoned up and more just sort of using the sharp end of the axe to tell their story about what they thought that president could do. And then I went on to write an open letter to that president that got published in the Wall Street Journal and on a few other outlets. And, you know, there were some places in my career where I took a hit for that, and some people were unappreciative. But that president invited me back to the White House, and I had a one-on-one meeting with that president. And that president did a couple of things policy-wise that I won't talk about here, but that I wouldn't have been able to have that access and that ability to tell that story. And since then, I've met subsequent presidents. I know half of you are like, which presidents we talk about? But since then, I've been back to the White House and met subsequent presidents. I've worked on like the First Step Act and other bills that have given people opportunity to get out the system and turn their lives around. About 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to go deeper into the private sector. And if I'm being honest, it was just a way to diversify my income. I've always wanted to go into real estate. And I purchased 2 properties in Savannah, Georgia. I live in New York. I live in Harlem. And it was 2 condominiums. And I quickly realized I couldn't afford to keep buying such expensive properties. And I went across the other side of Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I was in the hood, and I started buying houses there. And I quickly realized that I was good at buying real estate. And within 5 years, I purchased 90 houses, 90. And more importantly, I rent them specifically to formerly incarcerated people and people with criminal convictions who've been in the system and people on Section 8. So I'd say about 85% of all of my houses are occupied by formerly incarcerated people. So I found a way to do good and do well, and I feel good about that. And if I'm being honest, it's not why I got into real estate. I did want to make extra money from somewhere else so I could diversify my income so that I could continue to have a voice on these issues. Because sometimes when you speak out on issues forcefully, there's a price to pay. And I find that the price is usually a financial one. So I really wanted to situate myself as an advocate to be a more powerful speaker. But I got to be honest, what I've actually learned is that there are ways to move through the world where you do good for yourself, you do good for your family, you do good for generations that are yet to be born. And at the same time, you can do good right now in the world for people. And I have always measured my courage, my success, my abilities, based on whether I can go back into a prison setting and look people like you in the face and say, I tried to do the best I could. And that is my litmus test for whether I'm doing good work in the world. 2 hours ago, I just booked a trip to Memphis tomorrow. I didn't know I was going to Memphis 2 hours ago. But just to give you a sense of where I am now in life, like I am actively working on some pardon cases to try to get people out of prison, people who are facing football numbers right now. And just found out there's a person who's meeting with the current president in a couple of days, and they invited me to come down there and talk to them so that when they meet with him in Mar-a-Lago next week, they can talk to him about these handful of people that I'm trying to keep out of the system and get out of the system. And so I say that to help you guys and women know that really the world is yours when you get released. Like I remember sitting in the seat you're sitting in And I remember wondering what the world was going to be like and what barriers I was going to face and what opportunities I could create. And the one thing I wish people would have told me is that you get to shape the world you want. And I know that sounds easier said than done, but one thing I've learned doing the work to like close Rikers, First Step Act, Rockefeller drug law reform is like, if you believe in something, if you really genuinely believe in something and you hold on to it in your heart and your mind and you find the courage to say it out loud, even when your knees are shaking, you will be surprised how people will come along, start to believe in the same thing, support you through that journey. And the times where you falter and you find yourself in dark places, I've had multiple moments throughout those 25 years I just described to you where I have found myself. There was a time where I suffered from so much depression 7 years ago, I could have walked out on my balcony and jumped off. And I want you to hear that part of the story because there are going to be difficult moments, even in a story that sounds like it's all about success. Like literally after meeting all these presidents, after making good money in nonprofit, after being on CNN, MSNBC, all of this good stuff, there were moments where I suffered from depression, fighting depression, wouldn't have made it through if it wasn't for friends and family and therapists and so on. But the most powerful lessons in life rarely happen when you're on the mountaintop. They happen when you're in the valley. Pay attention when you're in the valley, when you cannot figure out where your next step is going to land and you have faith and you put that foot forward and then you put the next foot forward. I have been shaped as a leader and as a human being into a much more compassionate, thoughtful, giving, forgiving, graceful person at the moments where my life was at its darkest. Like when the light is shining, it is so easy to not dig inside and figure out who you really are as a human being. So right now, while you're still in a moment where you're climbing out, I mean, I've been on my back at the bottom of a dark well over and over. As you're climbing out, ask yourself, what is the lesson here for you? How does this moment shape you into what you want to be later? And there's so many moments where I get to make difficult decisions that are about breaking the law or not breaking the law, because those decisions happen every day in life. Every day. It doesn't have to be about pulling out a weapon or doing drugs. It could be as simple as, do I lie on my tax return? Every day, there's going to be difficult decisions to be made. But if you remember the lessons that you learned in the situation that you're currently in, and the promises you made to yourself, and the promises you made to the Lord, and the promises you made to your family and people who care about you, if you can hold on to those things and close the back door and shut it tight to going back to committing crime, I guarantee you every face I see in this audience can be as successful, if not much more successful than I've ever been. That's my spiel. I didn't write a speech this evening, but that's my life. That's my journey. I hope you get some sort of value out of it. And I'd love to use the last 15 minutes to take some questions.
Everybody give him a big round of applause. Mr. Martin, we appreciate that. That was super powerful. The message was there, and I'm sure he dropped a million jewels and said some things that resonated not only with myself, but with you guys out here. So if there's anyone in the room who has a question for Mr. Martin, now's the time to take advantage of that. Is there something you want to piggyback off of? Something you want to share with him, something you want to ask him, like he said, those hard questions. He's here to answer those. Casa Grande, Gene, here at Hope for Prisoners, and Southern Desert, who has a question and something that they'd like to share with Mr. Martin? Go ahead. Tell us your name.
All right, go ahead. Hi, my name is Samantha. First, thank you for your testimony. It really meant a lot to us. Congratulations on all your good times. First, with you on your bad times. Two questions. One, how do we get your training? And then two, do you know anything about the bill 413 and why is it delayed?
So I'm not in your state, so I'm not familiar with that bill, but I'm sure there are organizations in the state that you could put pressure on to get that bill moving. And I'm going to look it up after this, Samantha. And the question about my training. So it was never my training. I'm a person who likes to democratize information and opportunities. And so the training never belonged to me, though it was put together by someone who coached me about 15 years ago. The organization Just Leadership USA still does the training. I'm not there anymore, but it's an amazing year-long training, and you should think about signing up for that. There's also a handful of other organizations out here doing some amazing training. I don't know what your access is like to the internet or your ability to email me and follow up, but I'm very accessible if people can find a way to get to me. I don't know about how much access you guys have to email and so on. My website is GEM Trainers, GEM, my initials, trainers with an S on it, .com. Or if anyone can get to Twitter, and if I'm being naive, just laugh at me. But that's where I spend most of my time, on Twitter at Glenn E. Martin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the
you
question.
heard him on Twitter, Glenn E. Martin or Gem Trainer. That's how you can reach out to him. We have someone in the room who has something they'd like to share, a question, or what would you like to piggyback on? Come up, tell us your name, and what do you got?
Hi, my name is Kyle Conley. My question to you is, where do you see yourself in a year?
Question.
That's a good question, Kyle. Where do I see myself in a year? A year is a really short period of time, and like a year goes by really fast. I did have a conversation. I thought I'd never get back into nonprofit, but I did have a question with a very wealthy philanthropist recently. I've noticed that a philanthropist that used to give me money years ago died, and his partner is now giving out money and is in Savannah, where I ended up. Like 40 of my houses are in Savannah, and he's in Savannah. And I was like, oh, this is kind of full circle, because what I've always wanted to do is not just hire formerly incarcerated people to help me fix up my houses and let them rent my houses afterwards, but I want to see them own houses, not just own it for themselves. I want to see them become investors. And so I pitched to him that if he would give me $5 million, that I would produce 50 millionaire, formerly incarcerated people who own their own properties and who are keeping those properties affordable, but giving people places to move into that allow them to keep their human dignity. So I'm hoping a year from now, he writes me a check for the first $1 million out of 5, and I'm able to get that project off the ground.
Nice. 50 millionaires. Southern Desert Correctional Center. Tell us your name and what's your question.
My name is Willie Carter. I wanted to ask him, after facing so many hardships from the system, what gave you the courage to continuously look back and face your darkest hour and still have the humility to open doors for others? That's my question.
That's a really good question, man. You know, it's easy to feel sorry for yourself and blame others when you're in the dark place. That's the easy thing to do. It was somebody else's fault. When I learned to start out asking myself, what was my role in where I ended up, I found that I felt much more empowered. And so the first thing was taking responsibility. And that doesn't mean beating up on yourself. I don't beat up on myself. I have a pretty healthy ego. But at the same time, when something's not working out, I start with, well, Glenn, what decision did you make that landed you here? And even if there's someone on the other side of the table that's causing problems, problematic, troubling, mean, everything else, doesn't matter. What matters is how I got myself there. So that became very empowering to me. And then I guess the second thing I would say about being reflective and answering the other part of your question is, I remember when I took a fall years ago in my career. It wasn't my own fault, except that I surrounded myself, I think, with the wrong people and thought about them the wrong way. So that's my responsibility in that. And I was asking the person about, like, how do I get back in the position I was in? And they said, look, man, sometimes you got to live your life in seasons. What season are you in? And I think when I came home from prison, I was like in my summer. Like I was in my spring and then in my summer. And that gave me a lot of energy. And I wanted to lead the work, and I wanted to be the leader, and I wanted to be in front of the room, and I wanted to be on television, all this other stuff. And then I realized I'm kind of in my autumn. Like, you know, I'm 55. I've accomplished a lot. And if I could just pour into other leaders, like that's how you build legacy. You invest in the leadership of other people. I believe in what's called collective leadership. The idea that if I spend my time investing in the leadership of other people, that makes me a stronger leader over time. And so once I adopted that, and I believed that in my mind and in my heart, and then I started practicing it, and then I saw the outcome of it, I just do it every day. Like I do it naturally. I don't even think twice. Like my goal is to give it away. Earlier, I said I democratize information. I'm constantly asking other people what their needs are around me and how can I invest in them?
Oh, nice. That's so powerful. Give them a round of applause for sharing that. That hit home. Do we have anyone else who would like to share something, piggyback, have a question? Who do we have at Gene Conservation Camp? Tell us your name.
Yeah, hi, my name is Teresa. Thank you for speaking to us. Appreciate you. And I appreciate your advocacy and concerning prison reform and just helping the prison system, all that. And you mentioned the First Step Act. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Fair Sentencing Act, okay? So, but they're federal, basically. And a lot of these things are geared towards federal, okay? And we're in state, obviously, and there's a lot of stuff that gets talked about, but it never gets carried out. And Nevada, as everybody knows, is really hardcore. They're really tough, like that. We need some help here. And there are, you know, like John Ponder, and there's different organizations, but it seems like there's never, you know, it gets maybe to the legislation session, but then it gets shut down, or when it does go through, it doesn't get passed, or it doesn't go retroactive, or whatever the heck it is, right? And we're stuck, you know? So I guess my question is, what can we do, and how do you stop? Because I'm discouraged, okay? I've been down, I got the habitual that for stealing, like 5 to 20 years, you know what I'm saying? So never in my wildest dreams would I think they for $1,000 worth of shit stuff. You know, 20 years, right? But in only Nevada, right? But anyway, long story. What can we do? What can we do here? What we can, you know, do out there? How do we?
Yeah.
Discourage?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say this. As soon as you started talking, I was like, she is smart and I know what she's about to do. She's teeing me up. And so good job. Good job. I'm really impressed to begin with. You're very charismatic and you're very smart. And I appreciate your delivery of that question just now. Here's what I would say to you. Look, I don't have a silver bullet answer. What I have learned in my life is that, one, that women speak with a voice of authority that men do not. And so when women come together and speak with one voice, I find that to be very powerful. And I think when it's around the criminal justice system, it's like highly unexpected, number one. But number two, it gains the empathy of other women who have never been involved in the system. Like, as many people go to prison, many people will never go to prison. And the question is, how do you get people who will never go to prison to feel compassion for people who are in prison? And what you're fighting against is the dehumanization of people who end up in the system. And the only way to fight dehumanization is to show up as human beings and to help people understand the connection between your experience in life and theirs. And so what I would say to you is, like, if you can organize women who are just not only have been in the system, but women who help other women to feel empathy for what you're going through. I think one of the most powerful campaigns I've ever seen was run by a woman named Pam, and her last name is escaping me, in Georgia, around shackling of women to beds when they're having children in prison. And I cannot tell you how many women who had never been to prison, never been incarcerated, never been locked up, found empathy for those women and supported that bill and moved it through the Georgia legislature, and then continued to work on other bills as a result. But here's the last thing I would say to you, and it's the thing you may not like to hear. The leader you're looking for is looking you in the face. If you're saying, you don't need me there, you need you there. Like, you're a powerful voice, you're a charismatic voice, you're a thoughtful voice, you're a leader. I see the women behind you clapping for you, laughing with you. Like, that's where the power is. And you just have to organize that, and you have to believe in it. And strong organizing, it doesn't, I used to take hundreds of people to the steps of Rikers Island, and people would be like, but Glenn, they're more powerful than us. I'd be like, no, they're not. Like grassroots numbers is so much more powerful than elected officials, people with resources, but you have to believe it. You have to believe that enough voices on the ground telling power to do something different can bring things to a tipping point. And at the same time, the flip side of it is there was a president recently who someone asked him, why didn't you turn things around 180 degrees? And he said, when I became president, I thought I could turn the ship around 180 degrees. And I realized I could only turn it 1 or 2 degrees. But when you turn a ship 1 or 2 degrees, it ends up somewhere totally different. And as an advocate and an activist and an organizer and someone who wants to change policy and practice and laws, you have to have the humility to recognize you probably will only turn it 1 or 2 degrees, but that ship will end up somewhere else. You need yourself. You don't need me. You got the power you need in the room.
Thank you for sharing that, Glenn. Thank you for sharing that. We have time. Actually, we are going to conclude the Tuesday night huddle up. I want to thank everybody for tuning in on Hope for Prisoners Facebook page, LinkedIn Facebook page. Thank everyone at the Nevada Department of Corrections, Casa Grande, Gene Conservation Camp, Southern Desert Correctional Center. Everyone have a wonderful night. Thank you for signing in. I appreciate you guys and enjoy your night. See you next week.